Well, hello, everybody. This is Reanimated Podcast, and we're back after a week's hiatus. While HA went to do a regime change in the UK. And speaking of her, she's back in the US. Hi, HA. How's it going?
Hello. I came back, but apparently I left behind some zombie pigeons in the UK.
Oh, dear. What have you gotten into this time?
Oh, I don't know what it is, but apparently there's some kind of plague going around for pigeons in the UK that are causing them some twitching and neck turning. I did not actually watch the videos of this because I just didn't want to put that in my head, which is really funny given what we do. But you
Yeah.
know, but yeah, anyway, so that's going on. And UK was glorious, wonderful. Very bustling and amazing, and I love that city. Weirdly, I do have another like kind of bird story, which was the most amazing, not amazing, but kind of like a very Londony thing, I guess, to have him. But we were visiting various touristy things in the UK because I hadn't been there in a while, and I feel like the last time I had done that stuff, I was a little too young to kind of appreciate some of it. So we went to Westminster Abbey, and there is a Queen's Jubilee gallery that is like, you'll appreciate this, I think, because I thought it was weird and funny, but and cool also. But apparently they have all these effigies of different rulers and royalty, like some made of wax, some made of wood, and some that were kind of lost and locked up in a room that somebody discovered. So you can imagine how that must have been
Terrifying.
walking into that. But they have them all set up in their dress, and it's weirdly Egyptian in thought if you think about it.
How old are these things?
Some of them are very, very old. Like hundreds of years old even. So it's kind of weird. But one of them is this, I think this is like, I should have more details about this, but the funny part isn't who it is. But anyway, there's a countess or duchess, and she's there, and next to her is a stuffed African gray parrot, and the label reads that the bird died shortly thereafter her because she had requested that it be stuffed with her. So I don't think that the bird probably actually died. I think somebody probably took him out.
It was like, well, it was her dying wish, and so now I shall die.
Yeah, and again, much like Egyptian things, right? Anyway, as we're looking at this, one of the sort of docents or whatever comes up to us in their robes, and he starts striking up a conversation, and he opens with, "Do you like dead parrots?"
What?
I
It's a
was
Monty
like,
Python sketch or something?
that's what it kind of felt like. And he's like, "Would you like to see another one?" And
Who
I'm
would
like,
say
"Oh my."
yes to that?
Well, I did because it's me, and also I was like, does he have like a under his robes, does he have like another dead parrot? Like, is this gonna turn to dark?
There's a whole
Um,
chamber of dead parrots.
but apparently, in London there is, and this is what he shared, there is a very old bar called Ye Old Cheshire Cheese on Fleet Street, and it has a African gray parrot that was quite a celebrity in its day. It rubbed wings with the likes of Charlie Chaplin and others, but apparently had a very salty language, a salty vocabulary. And when the bird died, they stuffed it and they put it over the bar. And so, because this was such an unusual story, my husband and I felt like we had to go and visit the ye old Chester cheese and see the bird, and we did. So I can confirm it's there, and the bar is very cool. It was built in, I think, 1667. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, that's the end of my bird stories of the UK, but I just thought that was kind of random and amazing, and I enjoyed it.
Well, that's fantastic. Next time on H.A. Conrad's Bird Stories of the UK, we will be talking about more pigeon stories, probably. I don't know
Yeah.
what other birds even do they
Oh,
have.
again, weird. I know. I'm not into birds that much, but this was just seemed to be a bird related theme trip. But they also have parrots in similar to what we have in Greenwood Cemetery here. They have a bunch of parrots in Hyde Park, which I was unaware of, and probably a similar scenario where
Yeah,
they
just
gave
got
them
released
like
and then
that.
have bred.
I will say these are slightly less obnoxious in how they call to each other, but kind of a similar thing. It was just really kind of random. So anyway, parrots, City of London, it's a thing.
Who knew that parrots would be like this invasive
I
species?
know, right? But anyway, we are talking today not just about parrots, but about The Walking Dead last of the last episodes. We're going to be talking about the episode called Variant today. And I'm excited to talk about that with you. Did you want to talk about these other little news tidbits?
Yeah, I at least wanted to touch on it because I have brought it up before. I follow the passage on Facebook as much as I ever go onto that cursed website nowadays. But occasionally when I do, on more than one occasion now, I have been greeted by the passage updated their cover photo and then a new piece of art for the passage, that television show that you and I reviewed 2 or 3 years ago now, right? Before it was
Yeah,
canceled. It's
yeah.
been canceled, but they
Yeah.
keep updating the art. And
Yeah.
granted, they're all they're doing is like it's a now screaming on Hulu like frame over their cover art, but it's such a weird choice to be like, yeah, we're updating this canceled TV show's art. And the response is almost always like, oh, this is so disappointing from the people who follow that page because it's like a bait and switch.
Mm,
Not that that show wasn't great. You and I had a lot of problems with it, but we
yeah,
wanted
and
to see them get another season to see if they could fix them,
yeah, I know.
because
Or
also they
maybe they
didn't
get
even get to the coolest part of that story.
no, they didn't. And I mean, they could maybe they'll do a reboot at some point. Let's hope so. I was also disappointed because as I semi-suspected, Lockwood and Co., the release date on Netflix got pushed to January, so have to wait till then for that, sadly. And another very sad news, I had not seen this until you shared this, but the director
blood
of
blood quantum.
Blood Quantum, Jeff Barnaby, has died and very young, and it's just really horribly heartbreaking. I admit I did not realize that he was ill. And it's just really tragic on many levels, but also I really was hoping that we would see more. Um, and just to be I mean, he's 46 years old, just really sad, and he had a lot to say, and just really, really just very sad news. So anyway, I think that I just am really sad that we won't get to see more from him, and just taken a little too soon, I think. But
Yeah, I agree. This is tragic news. As you said, he had so much to say. He had messages layered on messages that he wanted to talk about, and I'm sure he had a lot more he wanted to do. So yeah, that is tragic. And one other piece of news that may or may not be considered a tragedy is the news that dropped yesterday, at least as far as I could tell, it dropped yesterday,
yeah,
about a change in the lead actor on the Witcher series, which doesn't have a lot of zombies in it. But honestly, the drowners are like basically
yeah,
zombies. They haven't been featured yet in the show, I don't think. And there were
no,
ghouls. There were ghouls in one of the seasons. But Henry Cavill is leaving to be replaced by Liam Hemsworth, who which is funny to see on Twitter because Twitter can be so casually cruel. People
yep.
are like, he is the worst of the Hemsworths.
I feel bad. I don't think I wouldn't agree with that.
I mean, I don't know.
Um,
I haven't, I've never thought to rank the Hemsworths, but it's
um,
to me, it's like Henry Cavill was kind of the ideal casting,
he was.
mostly because of the Christian McKellen level of dedication and devotion to the
Agree.
original content. So it's tough to stomach him being replaced by someone else who may or may not be as dedicated.
So I apparently Liam is a fan, so that's a positive thing. I think that the one thing that I'm a little not little, but just like, what are you going to do? You can't stop the show, like especially one this good, or I would hope you wouldn't want to stop a show this good. So you don't have much of a choice if the actor decides to sort of do other things. And I guess what I'm a little disappointed in is that I think it's because he's going Henry Cavill is going back to reprise Superman again. And honestly, I would much rather see him in this role than in Superman personally.
Yeah, is this like part of this James? I've been seeing a lot of headlines about James Gunn and DC.
Yeah,
Is he become
yeah.
their Paul Feige or something?
I think so. And then, but I also get it because, like, look, a series like this is pretty grueling. They have said this series in particular is very time consuming and like physically draining and like just with all, and that makes sense if you watch the series and see like all the work that they do on it. It's incredible and there's a reason why it's incredible, but I can understand that if you're an actor and maybe like he's done 3 seasons of it and maybe he doesn't want to get sort of stuck in that. And we've heard this from other people in these kinds of series. It just makes it harder when you're like the lead and when you do it so well. And I'm very sad he's leaving, but I'm also gonna give Liam a chance. And this has got to be a pretty difficult thing to do. So, but I don't know. I maybe would have been best to end it after this season, but I think we have to like just wait and see what happens, I guess. So,
Yeah,
but
I
that's
guess.
tough. That's tough. I mean, it's, you
Yeah.
know, it is what it is.
Also, CD Projekt Red, the developer of the video game The Witcher, just announced last week that they're doing a remake. They're basically they're remaking the first game with modern technology, which is kind of exciting. Sometimes those mean that they are doing like a complete from the ground, down, rip it down to the studs and rebuild it. Sometimes it's just like pasted into a new engine. But I did play the original Witcher and it was clunky, so I'd be excited to see them give it the old modern spit and polish. But moving on, we have an episode of The Walking Dead to discuss.
We do.
Variant was written by Karen Gaviola and directed by Vivian Say. I am pretty sure, or the other way around. 1.36 million was the audience. I think that's crept up from the beginning of the this chapter of the season. And we had left off with Sebastian getting his throat ripped out in front of a crowd of non-interfering bystanders. Like when we last left, I was talking on this podcast about how Pamela Milton looked like she was about to start setting her soldiers to killing members of the crowd because they were pelting her with fruit and veg. And some of our group of Alexandrians and others had left. Some were preparing to leave. And I feel like there's a bit of a disconnect at the beginning of this episode as far as where we left off. Not a disconnect, but they don't pick up right where they left off. They kind of do, because there are people in like Eugene is in the crowd.
Yeah.
And there's chaos, but then Milton is no longer out in the crowd is kind of what I'm getting at here. Like she goes from being like, Mercer, you need to protect me. I'm in harm's way. We kind of just wrap that whole situation up very quickly at the beginning of this episode, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that would have been interesting to kind of see. Also, I don't know, there was like a moment, so there's the usual stuff and the things that you would expect, where there's just a lot of confusion in the crowd. And Eugene gets separated from Max, but also weirdly somebody in the crowd says, "Oh, he killed he like killed Sebastian."
I noticed that too.
And I thought that
weird.
was a little weird because like I don't know, based on the things that they had just heard about Sebastian, I don't know, I didn't feel like I don't know, there were a few things that in this episode were like, I'm not sure about that.
It was disjointed, because they built up all of this anti-Milton feeling in the last episode. They went from people out in the streets protesting them and writing slogans against them to Founders Day having that huge revelation and throwing stuff at her, to now this rando is going to be like, you killed Sebastian, when all he did was throw a zombie off of Max toward Sebastian. And then there were 30 people standing around Sebastian watching him die and not helping him.
Right. So that felt weird to me and forced, and it didn't ring true to me.
And where is the pressure on Milton in this episode?
Right. It's a little odd. And then of course Eugene is saved by Daryl and very cleverly just hides him in a building and nobody notices or whatever. Like, okay. Um,
Yeah, I'm, this mob scene is a little frustrating in that people don't seem to be just going inside.
no.
They're running in different directions. They're screaming. There's one scene of a civilian getting clocked by a soldier,
Hmm.
and I'm like, oh, okay, this is turning. Um, but yeah, they're not just like going in like, and all they do is go into like a storefront. Daryl and Eugene. It's
Yeah.
kind of weird.
Um,
The next scene is of Sebastian on a slab in the morgue with Milton looking down at him and Mercer standing in the room.
right.
Mercer,
And
I
also,
think, has a really interesting episode. We can talk more about it, but
yeah.
what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say, they really take the turning thing like there's no way Sebastian wouldn't have turned. I mean, he got bitten pretty much like all through his neck. Like lots of opportunity here for him to turn, but it takes like it what hours, I guess, for him to turn in this case.
Yep, you never know.
Kind of weird.
It's
But
however
yeah,
the writer wants it to go. AJ, that's how this works.
I guess so. But it was still like, oh, really, really. So yeah. And so there, this is
What did you think of this conversation between Milton and Mercer here, where she's like, family is complicated. You should know. She's talking to Mercer. Your sister served me for 10 years, and maybe she can still be saved. She's baiting him to keep
yeah.
him working for her in this case, because I hopefully she understands how thin the ice is under her, or at least that's what we're supposed to be thinking, is that
Mhm.
she is really on the ropes. Mercer,
Is.
like I've said, Mercer has a very interesting episode because his loyalties are being tested. His like his power, I think, is really kind of under question here too. He seems to be getting emasculated from every side, and it's kind of
He
interesting to
is.
look at.
But this scene in particular really troubled me, because what I thought was going to happen in this scene, and maybe it still will, and I think that they're trying to build up that tension as you just suggested. But he's watched, he has been watching how things go down in this community for a really long time. And I guess like the thing that and there's a lot of things that just don't fully ring true to me, because he's watched how the Milton family has interacted. He isn't stupid. And while she's sort of dangling his sister in front of him, he knows that I mean, this is sort of to me very clear that his sister was the one who recorded Sebastian, and she views that as a betrayal. There's just no way she doesn't take vengeance upon Maxine, no matter what she's saying to him. And so where I thought this was going was that he would be like, yeah, sure, and pretend like he was helping, and then I thought it would be him being a lot more subversive a lot earlier on, but instead we see him very torn. And I guess in some ways they're trying to imply that part of it is that he wants to protect the community and the innocence of the community, and that's a lot of what they point to. That's a lot of the themes we see throughout, and we have been seeing like with Ezekiel, right? With Tommy, with other people, that they don't want to leave the community, and with Max, they don't want to leave the community because they feel like they have an obligation, even though it's not perfect, to make it better. And this is a theme we hear over and over again. But I just feel like this doesn't ring true, or at least it doesn't ring true if they don't show him somehow doubting or showing that he's smarter than Milton. I don't know. What did you think about that? Because I just don't. We've seen this woman and she's ruthless. Like there's just no way she lets Max off the hook, and I feel like he would know that.
This episode also throws me a loop as far as what she does to Hornsby later. So I was like, there are things she's doing that the writers are having her do that are unpredictable. I think.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um,
agree.
but yeah, like what she could be doing here easily would be getting him to find Eugene so that she can have both Max and Eugene in her hand.
Right.
Blame the whole thing on the outsiders because that's politically savvy, right? And we've seen her manipulate crowds, and they haven't admitted yet that she unleashed that zombie horde on the city, but I'm sure that that'll have to come up eventually.
Right.
and then also have Maxine, and probably she can't kill Mercer though because he's the face of the city.
No.
So she's actually kind of in a tough spot. She
Hmm.
gets rid of Maxine, she loses Mercer almost certainly. So that's tough for her. Like she has to kind of save or offer up an olive branch for Max, even though she is the traitor. So she'd have to keep her like isolated somehow. I don't know what she would try to do, honestly. Like that's almost an impossible situation.
Well, it is, and I'm not, I think that that makes sense to me what she's doing. It's what he's doing that doesn't make sense to me.
He's
And
just trying to preserve it no matter the cost, and
I
that
guess,
doesn't, yeah, that like that's certainly not how Alexandrians work. They
yeah,
they burn it all down for
yeah,
their principles, right?
yeah.
um Especially after the Savior War. And oh man, that scene with Princess in this episode
Oh yeah,
was really good.
yeah,
um so the next thing that happens after this scene though is she puts out an order to grab up all of the outsiders, which is, like, I think smart. Although they must be bringing in outsiders to this community constantly. But they grab up Rosita and Princess and Ezekiel. Daryl doesn't have a scene of interrogation, but he talks about having been taken in
yeah,
and then released.
yeah. And
Um,
I mean, I think that the stuff between Rosita, like when she's being interrogated, it's like, okay, Mercer, like what's going on here? And you see him sort of flag a little bit. But it's they are in a tough spot. I guess I just feel like they, knowing how quickly things have gone bad, I do feel like the Alexandrians would have had a plan to get out since they seem to have plans to escape people within the community randomly, right?
they really
Uh,
take their time in
it
this
feels like
getting
they're
out,
taking their time and getting out in a way that I don't think makes sense, but
not with
cool.
how tense everything is. Yeah.
Um, um, so
But they do have the kids with, I mean, they're supposed to have the kids with them. The kids are very rarely in this episode. They're not in this episode at all.
no, they're not. And then, they definitely up this tension with Mercer, and Mercer is sort of the linchpin, I think, in how they're trying to sort of show this particular tension in the community, because he has the conversation with Rosita, then he has the conversation with Princess, which is really hard. Um, it's the thing between him and Princess is like brutal. But in a good way. So
And yeah, for her and maybe for him, I would say for what's his name? Damn it. What's the actor's name? Michael James Shaw,
mhm,
in that scene that they have together. Like his eyes are so expressive. Like he doesn't get to say very much because
right.
she's on a roll with her monologue. But oh my gosh, the way he's responding to her, I was just like, man, this guy's putting in some work right now with his eyeballs.
Yeah,
Um,
and those two have a good chemistry, and it's very clear in this. And honestly, um, I was just like, man, I would just love to have more of them, like see more scenes of them together, because that scene, as you like, it was amazing.
yeah, just like the domestic drama of Princess and Mercer, their
Yeah,
relationship. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
and she lays out really what we're talking about here, and she sees this from a completely different perspective, which I really thought that the whoever wrote this scene, the dialogue was really great. And she basically says, look, I really care about you, I know you're a good person, but this was my history and this is how I feel. And basically, she came from a domestic violence situation when she was a kid, and her stepdad and her brother used to like beat her and chain her up, and her mom would say things like, this is, could be so much worse, or it could be, this isn't that bad, or just can't you just sort of deal with it. And that's really a commentary on a lot of things, and that's definitely in terms of domestic abuse, and other unhealthy situations, that is often something you hear people say. And it's people who are trying to survive, so it's sort of like in this particular scenario where you're not, where you're talking about, these communities, you can see that rhetoric. But I really loved the line that she said was, but it could be so much better,
Yep.
instead of it could be so much worse. And I thought that that hit really hard. And these two really like outdid themselves in the scene. I thought they were phenomenal. And I thought that that specific, how she leaves it, and she's like, I still have to go. And this is why, but it doesn't mean I don't care about you. And it's hard for her to go. And so I thought that that was to me the strongest scene in the whole episode. And
For sure. As far
really,
as the
really
just
amazing.
the performances, that was the
Yeah.
strongest scene. Although, Hornsby does some more sex face in this episode, and I'm always a big fan of that. But
So
before we get there, Aaron and Jerry and Elijah and Lydia we have a couple shots with them through
Mhm.
interspersed in this episode too. And they are driving their wagon to Oceanside, I think was their
Yep,
original
that's where
destination.
they're going.
They're loaded down with supplies. They're checking in with that community for reasons, without any of their family members, for in the case of Jerry and Aaron. When they
Mhm.
run into a zombie herd, not like literally, but like they see one down the road, and instead of waiting, which is Jerry's suggestion, Aaron's like, let's go off road. And we
Yep.
come back and see how that goes in a few minutes.
Yep.
But I was like, that's a bad idea, Aaron. Why
Yep.
is Aaron in such a bad mood? Why is he pushing so hard? I would like to get to
Well,
the bottom of this.
I'm sure we'll come to that at some point, but not yet. And um, it's nice to see these people, but again, Jerry's the conspicuous
Ray of sunshine.
yeah, I was going to say it's just the fact that we don't have any of their families
Oh
that
yeah,
it's sort of weird, but
he
whatever.
mentions Nabila at the end of this
He
episode.
does, so that's good.
Like finally, I don't know if
Finally.
somebody was like, we keep having all these scenes of Jerry, and we don't talk about his wife or his kids at all.
Right. And those are so important to him, and you know that they're important to him as a character, so it's sort of weird. But anyway, we'll come back to them. But
We will come back to them because the next scene is Rosita and Mercer. This is before the scene with him and Princess.
mhm,
But again, he is just like, Rosita is not a person that you will trifle with. Same
mhm.
with Princess. Like, Princess has kind of grown into that in the last season. Rosita has always been this way. She will spit hot fire, as it were. And she's just like, because he's being really weird and asking her
Mhm.
to like confirm her name and address and stuff. He also says that she's unemployed, which
Yeah,
wasn't she just with him out in
he was,
armor?
and I don't recall that like something happened, but
Did
okay.
she like did she muster out just before they are about to leave the
Okay.
community? But that happened in the last episode, and we just never saw it. I just thought that was a little weird. It's like,
Agreed.
okay, so she's unemployed apparently, and but she's like, oh, you don't know me, I don't know you. This is how it's gonna go. So she's very disappointed in him. You can feel it in this scene, and eventually, like, his hard exterior kind of does falter, and he's like, look, man, I like you. I think you're great, but I need your help to find Eugene
Mhm.
because he's the one going down for this. And I'm just like, this is not a strategy that's going to work for you in this scene.
No, and also he knows how close she is with Eugene, and this is not something that's going to work. And he knows it's sort of like, I don't buy that he would do this. So again, there's some things that they do with a few of these characters that to me just don't hit well, and they don't make sense. So and this was definitely one of them.
Yeah, there without it's a little weird that Mercer is the one leading this effort too. I don't know if it would have been more effective to have Hornsby's Gestapo doing some
Yeah.
of this work. Of course, we see kind of what's happened to them at the end of this episode too.
Right. Right. Right.
But yeah, Mercer doesn't feel like the right instrument for this sort of work, because you'd expect him to be interviewing these Eugene's friends and then tailing them, because they
Right.
do go straight to Eugene after their
Yeah.
interrogation. But that doesn't seem to be entering into the arithmetic here. And I'm like, wow, okay, this is like not a smart spy movie. This is
No.
just a soldier, like, pleading with some people he's come to be friendly with to do the wrong thing.
Right.
Like, so it's kind of a weird vibe for Mercer's efforts, and the fact that he just keeps getting yelled at by all these ladies that he has grown close with, Rosita professionally and Princess personally.
Right. Right. And then there's the whole thing with Eugene, which is like, I get it. I get what they're doing with him and
You
with
sound
Matt.
exasperated with him, and yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, you could go back and do this, and he's like, I'm not gonna leave her behind. And I mean, I like that they did a scene with him and Rosita because they obviously have that, and they do some, um, you know, like those two have one of the longest standing relationships on this show and friendships on this show, and so I appreciate that, but it just feels like from a tactical point of view, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for him to go and do what he does, but he does, and I guess that's where how they're moving the plot along. Um, but it used to be that Eugene was only after him for himself, but that has not been the case for a long time. But it feels almost like they're going back to that to some extent. Um,
You wait, like his selfless act is an act of what do you mean?
I mean, like when we first met Eugene, he was really just trying to sort of survive on his own. That's why he lied about all the things that he lied about.
Yeah, and that was the montage at the beginning of the episode too.
Yeah,
Was kind of his story. There was a lot of Abraham too, a lot of
yeah,
Michael
yeah,
Cudlitz in those flashbacks, and it was kind of like I did whatever I forget, was it Judith narrating it again, but it was
yeah,
kind of the like we do what we can to survive,
yeah,
but it doesn't mean that we're bad people, or I forget exactly what the moral of the story was in the
yeah.
montage.
But it sort of left out a lot of the parts about Eugene. Those flashbacks left out a lot of the parts of Eugene where he's already kind of gone down this path, or at least I feel like those things had already been resolved about him.
Yeah, like the time
Um,
jump kind of transformed him into
right,
a capable person again.
right. So it felt weird that it feels like they're sort of treading across the same ground, but I guess that's where they're going with this. So,
Yeah, well, in this case it's about this like love story, and that's weird that that's like his central theme for his character is, he was obsessed with Rosita for, I guess, in theory he was obsessed with Rosita, but I don't feel like that ever really was that well
no.
telegraphed.
Or what?
But there was certainly some scenes with the two of them at Kingdom during the Whisperer War,
Mm,
where she was like, you know do you want, yeah, you can't have it, do you want it, or something along those lines.
yep.
And so like he has to in a way either land this relationship or he's going to feel like a failure as a person, which that's kind of, those are some weird stakes.
Mm. So anyway, we got that going on. Um,
That is going on. Aaron is leading the foursome through the woods with the wagon, and then he's like, we can do it, you guys, let's keep going. And then the wagon rolls over Jerry's
okay,
leg.
can I just like pause for a moment here and say the minute that they had the whole thing with the wagon, I'm like, up,
Yes,
somebody's leg, somebody's foot, something's gonna happen here.
or they're just going to lose all this gear because the horse will like break a foot
Yeah, yeah.
walking off the trail. Like this is just really bad idea. And I'm like, Aaron, why are you making bad decisions? Why couldn't you just wait
Yeah.
for an hour until the horde had gone by? Also, I think it's during this scene that you also get a cut back to the zombies, and one of them like stops and turns
Kind of
around.
looks, and yeah, I thought the same thing that everybody did, which is that I was like, oh, is this the new one? Is this a new one, or is this
Or
the
is it a whisper,
first?
which they kind of think about
Yep.
for a few scenes in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But this zombie looks pretty zombie like.
Mm-hmm.
um Yeah, but so Jerry's foot gets run over, but then there's blood on his knee.
Which I'm like, how did that even happen?
Is this like a compound fracture? Is there a bone sticking out of there?
You just
Because
get it
then
like cut by the thing. I don't
like
know.
as
It
good as
wasn't
dead
clear.
if that's the case.
Right.
But yeah, there's a bloody bandage on his leg for the rest of the episode. And I'm just like, what happened in this
I
situation that
know.
was.
Yep.
I don't remember if Jerry has been injured in this way before, like kind of, like a leg taken out. But as the biggest member of the group, that's kind of one of your biggest fears, right?
Yep.
Like, oh God, now he's not mobile, and how are we going to get him around? And they don't really show how he gets off the roof of that stall by the end of the episode,
No, they don't.
because I'm like, just getting down from there would have been really painful
Difficult.
with a bad
Mhm.
knee.
Um, and they find this Renaissance fair place to shelter, which does look pretty cool, but you know, it's weird that it's sort of untouched, right? Uh,
Yeah, this is also very reminiscent of those like Gulch. What were those?
yeah,
The,
the gulch, the whatever
the
episode, the
theme
theme
parks
park.
from Fear the Walking Dead. So now they've found another theme park. And there's a lot of mentions of Kingdom 2.0, and well, maybe this will come back. And I don't know. There's not a lot of time to set up a whole new set. Well, this is the set exists, I guess, in this episode, but there's not a lot of time for them to set up an entirely new community. But maybe that's what they're leaning toward. Um, and Aaron is still being moody. Lydia's having second thoughts about Elijah, and she, even though they're all doe-eyed at each other.
Yeah, this is
Do
kind
you
of
care
odd.
about this plot line at all?
No, and I think it's it feels like it's kind of wedged in a little bit, but I'm sure either Elijah or her is going to bite it, um, based on how much they're building this up, and Aaron maybe too.
I don't know. I Because of the emphasis that they put on in that conversation that she has with Aaron later, where he's like, "Look, I said no to my husband so many times, and that's my only regret now. Because if I had been with him longer before he died, that would have been awesome."
Mm,
Which you can only say in hindsight. But that's the showrunner or the writer saying, love is good. We should
mm.
always seize love, and take advantage of it. So I don't know. I feel like maybe this is a hopeful message for this show. Of course, they don't like to let people be happy. If Lydia has one more potential partner die on her, I think she's gonna throw in the towel.
Yeah. So, so we have them all in this little community having I do like the little scenes between them, and there's and Jerry's kind of cute being like, this could be the new kingdom, it's pretty adorable. And then Aaron's just being cranky and not having any of it. And but part of it that is I do like about it is that they clearly have done what they're supposed to be doing. They've checked the perimeters, they've blocked everything, and it really is to build up the fact that they have this or walker, like maybe Whisper, like kind of skulking around out there. They show just like a hand grasping and reaching and basically, doing things that normal walkers don't do.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting.
Those hands, man, those hands do not look like they're gray and they're
Yeah,
discolored.
yeah,
But that Walker's face is like very deteriorated. Those
yeah.
hands just look
Do
like
not. They just look like they've been kind of just dead, right?
fleshy hands that are just, yes, I don't know. Like, I kind of wish that they had shown, and it would have had to be CG probably, because there's not a lot of meat on hands that you can alter
Right.
with prosthetics. I mean, maybe, but yeah, it would have been, I think it would have been a little better, because you see those hands a few times to like reach up and do something weird, and each time they're like very alive looking to me.
Well, and I think that they were trying to sort of straddle that line to make it be like, well, is this a whisper or not? But then they shouldn't have made the walker so decomped,
Yeah,
So that was the thing. I'm like, well, this is an odd decision because those hands would probably be so much more desiccated and like gross.
missing some fingers maybe, like, I don't
Yeah,
know, it would have
something. They
been.
would just be deteriorated. Like you're not going to have that much flesh left on them if his face and body are looking like they
Well,
were.
let's just actually talk out the rest of this storyline. Like, this is the
Yep.
B plot, I guess, for this episode. But so Lydia and Aaron stay up and do their first watch because Lydia is avoiding Elijah, although Aaron has already kind of talked her into trying it out to smooch with him again. When they start hearing creepy sounds like
Mhm.
creaking metal and thudding sounds, and then very quickly there's 4 zombies, then there's like 20, and then there's like 100 zombies inside the area, and their first reaction is to go and fight them,
Mm,
and then she comes face to face with the super zombie or whatever it is, which grabs her stick,
yep.
and then they run away, and then they decide to wake up Jerry and Elijah.
Yep.
uh so I thought that was, these are good scenes. Angela Kang talks in the after show about how challenging a shoot this was because it was a long night shoot.
Yep.
um Lots of these, I didn't see any CG. These look like all zombie extras,
Yep.
which they haven't been doing as much of in this show recently. Like, there's been the scene of the herd approaching the Commonwealth. It was like 2 zombies and 1,000 CG zombies. or at least it didn't feel like they had that many zombie extras. This, I think, was one of the biggest zombie extra scenes we've had in a long time.
Yeah, and it looked great and I liked it. I also love the decision to have Lydia be the one that first sort of encounters directly this new walker because of her experience with the whispers, because she, that makes sense. Like she has the most knowledge in terms of this particular.
And her response, yeah, she
Yeah,
she
yeah.
stabs it in the shoulder or in the chest, thinking it's a whisperer,
Yep.
but then it like doesn't have the effect that she was
Right.
hoping, and they just kind
Right.
of run away. I thought
So
that,
that I
yeah,
thought
that was
was
good.
really cool. And then how they escalate this, and and they think that they're safe and the normal things that they would do in this situation doesn't work because this thing is like problem solving.
Yeah.
And I
Jerry's
did,
reactions really are
yeah,
great. And
great.
every time
Yeah,
something different happens, like especially at the very end, but like
yep,
when they see the
yep,
doorknob turning, he's like, "What
yep,
the?"
yep.
And that's when Aaron is like, "It's the whisperers," and he starts like looking for whispers, but there aren't any.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just keep kind of running away until they're on the roof of this little stall,
Yep.
and they're looking over the edge trying to figure out what they're gonna do next. When our there's only one, right? There's only
Yeah,
one
there's only
zombie
one
that's,
that they seem to be
because
talking about.
it's
So,
wearing that like sleeveless plaid vest, which so you just recognize it over and over again. And it's the one with Lydia's knife sticking out of it, and it
yep.
climbs up, and Jerry's just going, "Dude."
Yeah, that was so great.
It picks up a big rock too. Like they don't just let it stop at turning
No,
doorknobs. And I did like the
rock.
fact that they had a little round doorknob. It was very reminiscent of the Joneses' house, right? Morgan
Yep.
and Dwayne looking at the doorknob move. Were they awake looking at that in
Yeah,
episode
yeah,
one? uh yeah, I thought that was a good callback. Of course, we've talked about this, like this is all just a way to retcon some of those decisions that they
yeah.
made in those
Yep.
episodes. But I don't know, it's kind of working for me. Like this is changing the playing field a little bit.
I'm fine. I'm fine with it. I don't know that it was necessary for them to talk about, well, I heard rumors. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know that they needed to go that far, but they did, so that's fine. And it like Aaron's like, I thought it was just urban legends, and but I thought one of the greatest things though was when he really thinks it's a whisperer and then he pulls its face off and it's clearly a walker. And that was his face was amazing
Yeah.
in that. I thought that was a great scene. So they've introduced it. It's there. I'm sure more will be coming. But that was them having a conversation about it and saying, okay, well, if this is the case, there's some things that are going to have to change now, right? Because we have to change how we're doing things. And that makes that is a game changer. But this was, they've successfully killed it. They're moving on to Oceanside, but they basically feel like they have to talk to others about this to try to warn them. But Aaron seems to be in a better mood anyway.
Yeah, what, like, why haven't they explained why he's all angry? Like
I don't
it does
know.
feel like a big question mark.
I don't know. So I'm assuming they will revisit this group at some point, but that's where they kind of leave it here. In uh other weird relationships or weird things that happen, we've got Pamela Milton, her whole scene with Sebastian, which is very creepy, and their whole dynamic has always been creepy. Like I think I sorry, not Sebastian, Hornsby. Hornsby is, I mean, I think he's such a phenomenal actor, and that's why these scenes are so creepy. But their whole dynamic is weird, and I don't know. What did you think about it?
Well, the scene before she even goes to Hornsby, where she is with Sebastian, she's like, she has
Yeah,
a bunch of scenes with his dead body, right?
yeah.
And
It's
this time,
very It's reminiscent of another governor, right? It's reminiscent of the
sort of,
Penny.
except in this case, there is no like, you were a great kid.
No.
It's like, now we can finally stop disappointing each other. I thought was a good
Yeah, yeah.
line. And then as soon as he reanimates, she leaves the room and says to a soldier, "Take care of that." Which,
Right,
you hear that line, you see who she's telling it that to. You're like, oh, she's just gonna have it put down.
right,
Like, there's no reason not to think that that's what's happening there. I
right.
thought this was really smart to then kind of turn that on its head when she does go to see Hornsby
Right.
in a couple of scenes. um and yeah, like this was, so Hornsby's there, he's like, like, let's work together, I think we can do this. She The fact that she knew that he was behind everything too, I thought was kind of interesting.
Well, I mean, they both had the same sort of game, the game book, the playbook, because
Mhm.
like she knows it's him because she's done the same thing.
She's
So
taught him everything he knows,
yeah,
probably.
yeah. And so I thought that was interesting. And you know, she blames him for Sebastian's death, but really, I mean, I don't know. Even when they kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it, Sebastian definitely was part of like a lot of nefarious things going on, which she even admits, but she's like, but I loved him. And I don't know. I feel like that tropey storyline is kind of annoying. I don't know. I think she
Mm.
loves power a lot more. I don't really particularly think that she would, not that she wouldn't care that her son was dead, but in some ways this is a problem solved for her. So I don't know.
I don't know. Her dynasty is dead. Like that
I
was her whole
guess.
plan, was to keep it going. And now what? Like, yeah, she has to be thinking of legacy
Yeah,
still. Like, and who is the kingdom going to go to next? There is no obvious person except for Hornsby.
right.
But she doesn't seem to be trusting him.
No,
Even to the end of the scene, it's very unclear what she intends to do with him, right? Because she's like, she flips the coin. She's like, if it's you call it and it's whatever, then you live. He's like, oh, thank you so much. But then the next thing that happens is, oh, it's old Sebastian. He's back, and here's Calhoun with a
yeah,
fatal wound.
Roman is you know,
Who?
Roman, who was one of the Hornsby.
Isn't that Calhoun?
Let's see.
Oh, his first name is Roman.
Okay, so we're both right.
We were both right.
Anyway, she's like, "Oh, feed the corpse to Sebastian," and it's like, well, that only works for so long, right? It doesn't matter whether you're feeding him a corpse or not. It's not like he gets satiated, right? I don't know.
Yeah, but now he has a weapon.
True.
He's in a cell with a zombie and a warm body, and his instructions are to feed the zombie. Like,
Mm.
this is not. Yeah, I'm curious. Like, where is this going? I
Yeah,
will
I
admit,
don't
like
know.
this, because I assume he cannot put down Sebastian. That's not his instruction.
Nope, it's
He
to
has a
take care of
weapon.
him.
Uh, Very strange.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, like what is Melton doing? Who is the big bad? Is is it her? Is it him?
Yep.
Is it going to be some sort of twofer? Maybe we'll find out. We've also had a scene with Eugene challenging Mercer, or not Mercer, Daryl to
Yep.
a fisticuffs.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of laughable.
Yep.
I think you've already kind of talked about your feelings about this Eugene storyline. You're not a huge fan.
It just feels forced and dumb.
Yeah.
But
And when at the end of this episode, he goes to the cops and turns himself in despite the advice of Rosita, who tries really hard to talk him out of it. Daryl doesn't try at all. I think Daryl's just kind of, he does, he talks about being smart.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, Daryl does not try to talk him out of it. Rosita does, fails. And in the end, he goes to turn himself into Mercer. Max is apparently in the other room and can hear it. Um, there was one of the Commonwealth soldiers in that scene in like their police headquarters or whatever it is, just never gets out of his chair, is drinking his coffee.
Yep.
I was like, this is my spirit animal.
Yep.
Uh, we don't all need to get up just because one guy walks in and puts his hands up.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, I guess that's kind of everything that happens in this episode. Jerry does talk about King Jerry and Queen Nabila
Mm-hmm.
at the very end, and Rosita's packing Eugene's bolo tie, which he had given her to give to Coco.
Yep.
Oh yeah, then she gets rolled up by some strangers.
Yep.
I was kind of disappointed that she wasn't able to beat them up.
Yeah, it was a little too easy, I think, for them to take her, but cool.
She's the consummate badass, and I don't think she would get snuck up on quite
No,
so
I
easily.
don't I don't think so either. And that's again, but I guess we'll have to see what happens in the next episode or two.
Yeah, well, I guess we will have to wait and see what happens in the next episode or two. But this was Variant, and another kind of triggering title for an episode, right? Lockdown and Variant. Are we kidding here? Walking
No,
Dead.
no. Well, thank you everybody for listening today and for bearing with the we didn't do too much of a hiatus because we pre-recorded, but Excited to talk about the rest of the season, and if you have thoughts about variant and where the season is going and the new zombie variant that we saw, let us know. Send us a tweet. Reanimated PCast is the handle. As long as they keep letting us, I guess, post.
Huh.
With
Yeah,
the new
we might have to switch. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens. Or you can check us out on Podbean, reanimated podcast on Podbean. Is that what it is, Stuart?
Reanimated.podbean.com.
Ah, thank you. Thank you. And just let us know what you think, or you could email us, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, and love to hear your thoughts. As always, and until next time, ciao and happy Halloween.
Ta ta for now.